I never saw it coming. One moment, everything in my life felt perfect, and the next, I was left standing in disbelief. Emma, my wife of 5 years, had always been the center of my world. I loved her with everything I had, every sacrifice I made, every effort to give her the life she wanted. But on that day, it all shattered in an instant. We had gone to the party to celebrate a milestone in my career. It was a big event, successful, classy, and filled with people who admired me. I was proud of everything I'd accomplished, and I was eager to share the moment with Emma. But as I walked into the room, I saw something I will never forget. She was standing there laughing with another man, her hand resting on his chest like they had shared a secret only they understood. And then it happened. She kissed him, right there in front of me, in front of everyone. I froze. The laughter around us was a blur. The noise of the party faded. All I could hear was the rush of blood in my ears, the rapid beating of my heart as I struggled to understand what I had just seen. Was this some kind of joke? Had I misunderstood the situation? But no, there was no denying it. Emma, my wife, the woman I had trusted with my heart, had just kissed another man in front of me. Her eyes met mine, and for a split second I saw something in them. A mix of guilt and something else. Something far worse. She didn't even apologize. Instead, she turned to the man and whispered something in his ear. He smiled, and they both walked away, leaving me standing there, feeling like a fool. The betrayal stung in ways I didn't know were possible. The woman I loved had just humiliated me. Not behind closed doors, but right in front of everyone. And in that moment, I realized something darker. Emma wasn't just unfaithful. She had been planning something for a long time. She wasn't leaving me for love. She was leaving me for riches. I confronted her later that night in the privacy of our home, but her words hit me like a slap across the face. "I'm done with you," she said, her voice cold. "I want a life of freedom, and with you, I'll never have that. He's offering me everything I've ever wanted. Money, luxury, power, things you can't give me." The words kept echoing in my mind. She had chosen wealth over love. And what was worse, she didn't even seem to care about the life we had built together. I wanted to scream, to demand an explanation, but all I could do was stare at her, trying to grasp the reality of what had just unfolded. My mind raced, the betrayal slowly transforming into something darker. What would I do now? Could I let her walk away so easily, leaving me in this sea of pain and confusion? I would make her regret this. She would see that her perfect life, the one she thought she had found, would turn into a nightmare she could never escape from. The days that followed were a blur of anger and disbelief. Emma moved out quickly, taking her things and leaving behind nothing but the echo of her words. It didn't take long for her to dive headfirst into her new life with the wealthy man she had chosen. From what I could see on social media, she was living in luxury, traveling to exotic places, attending high-profile events, flaunting everything she had always wanted but could never have with me. But as I watched her, something inside me hardened. The pain of betrayal was still there, but beneath it, a growing need for justice began to fester. She had taken everything I had offered her, my love, my trust, my time, and tossed it aside like it meant nothing. Now it was my turn to take something from her. I wasn't going to confront her directly. That would be too easy. No, my plan was far more calculated. I knew the one thing she valued above all else now, her newfound wealth and status. And I had an idea, a way to tear apart everything she had built, to make her realize just how foolish she had been to choose money over loyalty, over the life we could have had together. I started small, gathering information. I had learned the hard way that when you are betrayed by someone you love, you start seeing everything differently. I was no longer blinded by affection. I saw the cracks in the world she had entered. The man she was with, David, was no angel either. His reputation was tainted by rumors of manipulation and unethical business practices. I knew this, but what I didn't know was how far Emma had gone to entrench herself in his world. I started to dig deeper. The more I found out, the more I realized that Emma wasn't just a victim of her own desires. She was complicit in something far darker. I gathered evidence, emails, financial transactions, and conversations that showed how she had manipulated David for her own gain. She wasn't just in love with him, she was using him to climb even higher, to reach the world of wealth and influence she'd always dreamed of. Once I had everything I needed, I set my plan into motion. I would expose her for what she truly was, a woman willing to destroy anyone, even the man who had loved her, for the sake of riches. But I wouldn't do it all at once. No, I would make her believe that everything she had worked so hard for, everything she had thought was secure, was slipping away. I would make her feel the same uncertainty and fear she had made me feel when she walked out of my life. The first step was simple. I used her manipulation of David to my advantage. I sent an anonymous tip to a reporter who had been investigating David's shady dealings. The story hit the press like wildfire, and within days, David's empire began to unravel. Emma, ever the socialite, was caught in the middle. I didn't care if she blamed me for the fallout. What mattered was that she started to see how quickly her perfect life could fall apart. The storm hit harder than I anticipated. Within a week of the article being published, David's world had started to crumble. His businesses were under investigation, and whispers of his corrupt dealings spread like wildfire. It was a shock to everyone, especially Emma. I watched as she scrambled to contain the damage, trying to protect her newfound life. But no matter how hard she tried, the truth was starting to bleed through the cracks. She had underestimated how deep I could go. I knew her, how she thought, how she reacted when things spiraled out of control. And now, as her carefully curated world began to disintegrate, I saw her desperation. It was in the way she started to cancel high-profile meetings, the way her social media posts turned from boastful celebrations to forced smiles. Her life was becoming a nightmare, and it felt good to watch. But it wasn't enough. I knew she was tougher than this, that she would fight to keep her place in the world she had so eagerly entered. She wouldn't go down without a fight. That's when I realized that if I wanted her to truly understand the consequences of her choices, I had to hit her where it would hurt the most, her reputation. So I began planting seeds of doubt, subtly. I leaked a few photos of her with David during the early stages of their relationship, long before their supposed love story had blossomed. The photos, innocent on their own, painted a different picture when paired with the growing allegations about David's corruption. I didn't need to say a word. The whispers of their affair spread, and with them, the public's perception of Emma started to shift. She wasn't just a woman chasing her dreams. She was a gold digger, a woman who used love and deceit to get what she wanted. It worked. Slowly but surely, Emma's perfect life began to unravel in the eyes of those who had once adored her. Invitations to exclusive events were revoked, business opportunities disappeared, and the people she had once relied on for her social status turned their backs. The walls were closing in, and she couldn't stop it. I saw her once more, on the night of a charity gala she had desperately tried to salvage. She was standing outside, staring into the distance, the weight of her choices visibly pressing down on her. She wasn't the confident, radiant woman I had once married. She looked like a ghost of her former self, a woman on the edge, unsure if she could salvage anything from the wreckage she had caused. Her eyes met mine for a brief second, and in that moment I knew she understood what was happening. But instead of anger, instead of blaming me, there was something else in her eyes. Fear. Fear of losing everything. Fear of being exposed for who she truly was. And that fear was only the beginning. Emma's life continued to spiral downward, but she still hadn't learned her lesson. Even as the public's opinion of her soured, she clung to her relationship with David. She tried to paint herself as the victim in this chaos, desperate to salvage whatever dignity she could. But the cracks were too wide to hide. She couldn't escape the truth that was now out there, and it was driving her mad. But the moment that truly broke her came unexpectedly. I had arranged one last piece of the puzzle to destroy the facade she had worked so hard to build. The information I had gathered about David's businesses was now in the hands of someone who could make it public. I had made sure that everything pointed directly to Emma, her financial involvement, her efforts to manipulate David's empire to her own advantage. This was the final blow that would shatter her world. The news broke on a quiet Tuesday morning. Emma was implicated in a major financial scandal. The revelation showing that she had been the one pulling the strings behind the scenes, using her relationship with David not just for love, but for power, control, and wealth. The media frenzy was immediate. Headlines plastered across every screen and news outlet, painting her as the mastermind of the scheme. Her name was synonymous with betrayal, greed, and manipulation. But the real damage came from the people she once called her friends. The powerful elite she had so desperately tried to align herself with turned their backs. They distanced themselves from her faster than I could have hoped. Invitations to parties and galas disappeared. Her social status, her safety net, was gone. And all she was left with was the fallout. The accusations, the whispers, the glares in public places. Her reputation was in tatters, and there was no escape. It was then that I saw the full extent of her regret. Her calls to me became frantic, her once confident voice now cracked with desperation. "Please, I can explain," she would plead. But I didn't answer. There was nothing she could say to undo what had already been done. For the first time, she truly realized the cost of her actions. The man she had chosen, the riches she had sought, and the life she had built, all of it was slipping through her fingers. I watched her from afar, knowing that every step she took now was a desperate attempt to salvage something from the wreckage. But there was no redemption for her. Not yet. Emma had fallen from grace, but she refused to acknowledge it. As the weeks went by, she continued to fight for her place in the world she had once belonged to. She tried to salvage her relationship with David, desperate to regain some semblance of the life she had imagined. But the damage was too great. David, the man who had once been her golden ticket, had quietly distanced himself from her, realizing that he too had been used. Emma's attempts to reach out to him were met with silence. She tried to manipulate him once more, but it was clear he had lost all trust in her. Her empire had crumbled, and now she was alone, facing the consequences of her betrayal. But instead of retreating into the shadows, she took a last-ditch effort to reclaim what she had lost. She reached out to me. The message was simple. "We need to talk. Please just give me a chance to explain." She wanted me back. She wanted forgiveness, but I knew what she was really after. She needed me to fix her life. She couldn't survive without someone to catch her as she fell, and she thought I would be the one to do it. I thought about her words, about the way she had discarded me when she thought she could do better. The love I once had for her was buried deep under the rubble of betrayal, and I knew that no apology could ever undo what she had done. But I also knew that the satisfaction I had felt seeing her struggle was fleeting. There had to be more to it than just watching her fall. I made my decision. I arranged a meeting, the last one she would ever expect. She arrived at the cafe looking tired, her makeup heavy from the sleepless nights she had endured. She wasn't the confident, radiant woman who had walked out on me all those months ago. She was broken, defeated, lost. And as she sat down, her eyes filled with a mix of regret and hope, hoping that I would take her back, that I would somehow save her. "I never meant for any of this to happen," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I could have it all. But I see now how wrong I was." I looked at her, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't feel any anger. I didn't feel any satisfaction. I just felt empty. She had taken everything from me, but in the end, she had nothing left to give. She was no longer the woman I had once loved. She was just a hollow shell of her former self. "You thought you could have it all," I said, my voice steady, "but you didn't realize that you'd lose everything in the process. You used me, Emma. You used him. And now look where you are." Her eyes welled up with tears, but there was no comfort I could give her. She had made her choices, and now she had to live with them. I stood up to leave, but before I could turn away, she grabbed my arm, a final plea. "Please don't leave me like this. I'm sorry, I was wrong." But I didn't look back. As I walked out of that cafe, I knew there was nothing more to be said. Her life was ruined, and I had given her the wake-up call she so desperately needed. She was facing the consequences of her actions, and now all that was left was the aftermath. Months passed and the world moved on, but Emma never did. The scandal that had shattered her life was now just a distant memory for most, but for her, it remained an ever-present weight, dragging her down. She lost everything: her reputation, her wealth, her connections. And there was no way to reclaim what she had lost. She tried to rebuild, tried to start fresh, but the truth always caught up with her. The damage was irreversible. She would occasionally reach out, sending texts and emails, each one filled with apologies and pleas for forgiveness. But I had made it clear that I was done. I had moved on from the woman who had betrayed me, and there was no place for her in my life anymore. One day I received a call from a mutual acquaintance. Emma had been spotted at one of the lower-end bars downtown, sitting alone, nursing a drink as if trying to drown the regret that haunted her. The once glamorous woman was now just a shadow of her former self, a ghost of the person she used to be. She had fallen from the top, and there was no coming back. The life she had chased, the riches, the status, the power, had consumed her, and in the end, it had left her with nothing. The man she had discarded, the one she had left behind for a life of luxury, was the one who had walked away with everything: peace of mind, self-respect, and the satisfaction of knowing that the life she had stolen from him had ultimately been her own undoing. As for me, I had learned something important in all of this. Sometimes revenge isn't about tearing someone down or making them suffer. It's about letting them experience the consequences of their own actions. Emma didn't need me to destroy her. She had already done it herself. All I had to do was step back and watch. When I think of her now, I feel nothing. There's no bitterness, no anger. Just a quiet, empty satisfaction that she's finally faced the reality of her choices. I know she'll never truly find peace, but that's her burden to bear, not mine. In the end, her perfect life turned into a living hell, not because of what I did, but because of what she did to herself. She chased after everything she thought would make her happy, only to realize too late that the things that matter most, love, trust, and integrity, can never be bought. And as for me, I'm at peace. My life is richer than I could have ever imagined, not because of money, but because I've learned to value the things that truly matter. And in the end, that's the greatest revenge of all.